mass entrepreneurship is a concept that GAME started almost thinking 4 years ago, started working on it 3 years ago. And the last 3 years has been a phenomenal learning journey of trying out a variety of things, partnering with a bunch of folks across the spectrum. And from that Samudra Manthan, if you will, has emerged this concept of a national entrepreneurship mission, right? I must say that Ravi has been the hala in the sense of drinking all the poison that emerged from the Manthan over the last 3 years. GAME has done that to a large extent. I think we now have a reasonable construct of what and how.
This is the Amrut.
This is hopefully the Amrut and we are just getting into the Amrut Kal as well. So I think the timing is perfect. We couldn't have asked for a better timing, and we couldn't have asked for a better forum than this to discuss the construct and the concept of a national entrepreneurship mission. Why we believe that the mission is super critical now, is super critical for all of us to come together to do our bits and make sure that we are creating an entrepreneurial economy that can really create a massive number of jobs and create growth and prosperity all around. Well, we will have the panel discussion around this concept in a while. I'll request Ravi to get this going with a brief presentation as a keynote address on how we have arrived at the concept of the National Entrepreneurship Mission and take us through that. Ravi, over to you.
Yeah, distinguished delegates and very distinguished panelists, good afternoon. I want to make some brief opening remarks that provides context for the National Entrepreneurship Mission and what it is we've been thinking about. So for the last 4 months or so, a whole set of organizations, individual leaders have provided their best thinking and critical feedback into what we are calling the concept and design of a national entrepreneurship mission. And we hope to make the concept design public very soon. But essentially, the three questions we ask them is, look, is it time for India to consider such a mission mode project? Second, what would such a project achieve? And number 3, how would it accomplish this? Now, what was the reason for even doing this exercise? The answer is very, very simple. And this morning also, we've been talking only about one thing pretty much, which is jobs and livelihoods. We know that we're in the midst of a very, very grave economic, social, and political crisis with the unemployment situation in the country. It is deeply structural. And the number on this slide that I pay attention to most, the most staggering number, is the workforce participation rate, which is 46%. It's actually lower in the CMI's new numbers. But what that means is 6 out of 10 Indians of the working age don't even bother looking for a job anymore. They have given up. And in particular, this affects youth and educated youth most. So if you're a 30-year-old person, male or female, with a college degree from some college, it was not one of the best, you are 5 times as likely to be unemployed as if you're illiterate. Now, when I first read this, I was shocked. This can't be, it must be the other way. But it turns out to be true. For most of our lives, we've grown up with the assumption that education, that to higher education, is the ticket to prosperity and improvement and progress in life and becoming part of the middle class. This assumption today is under serious stress. Now, the question is, okay, problem is fine, we've understood it, how are we going to solve it? And, there's no silver bullet, but one of the obvious pathways is a lot more entrepreneurship. And this is not a new idea. Our Prime Minister talked about it first in 2015. He says we need to convert job seekers to job creators, okay? And he's talked about it a number of times since. But how? And also, it's not enough to have a few of them become job creators. You need a nation full of such job creators. So that's kind of the idea that has spurred us. Now, our vision of entrepreneurship is quite different from what most people think about. When you hear the word entrepreneurship today, in most places, you immediately think about something quite elite. IIT graduates starting tech ventures with venture capital, becoming unicorns, mostly in 5 cities, okay? Our vision of entrepreneurship is much broader. It is millions of ordinary people with no great skills or qualifications, starting lots of mundane enterprises, from food businesses to solar installation and maintenance to beauty salons, etc., in every nook and corner of the country, in every district, in every tehsil, and some of these start growing, and they start hiring people, and they create 5 jobs or 10 jobs, okay? And eventually, these add up to very large numbers. So McKinsey helped us a lot with the modeling. Our modeling suggests that we should be able to create 100 million new jobs reasonably by 2030. And indeed, it is the only way the national priorities of a $5 trillion economy and becoming Atmanirbhar are going to be achieved. Now, the good news is this is not starting from scratch. This is not something where we have to start ab initio. A lot of the building blocks are there. Why did we even think about a mission mode project? If you look back at India's history at various times, we have taken a great jump, a great leap forward through tackling a big problem in mission mode. The earliest example might have been the Green Revolution. In the last decade, we have had Aadhaar, we've had the National Solar Mission, we've had Swachh Bharat, each of which achieved significant progress in a short time. And the ingredients of success were the same 3 or 4 things. One is a big ambition and an urgency to achieve it. The second is strong, effective leadership of the mission. Number 3 is political will. And the fourth is, it wasn't just a government project or mission. It involved all of society, including private sector and civil society, in the mission. Now, for 3 years, as Madan mentioned in his introduction, a number of organizations, 25, both from private sector and civil society, have been working with government on this idea of entrepreneurship. And this is the alliance we call GAME. And over these 3 years, we've learned a lot. Mostly what we've learned is, they're tough problems, but they're also very, very effective solutions. And many of these solutions can be taken to scale. So let me give you 3 or 4 examples. So in this convening, maybe in this hall, I don't know, I can't see because of the lights, or certainly I've met them outside, are organizations like Udhyam, like Lend a Hand, Raj Gilda's group, Aflatun. And for many years now, they've been running exceptionally effective programs in government schools, delivering entrepreneurship mindset and skills to high school students. And now this is operating at a scale of several million students a year with great, great success. So we think these are the programs that should be taken to national scale. And in this century, every young person should have an entrepreneurial mindset and skills, not just those who are going to start businesses. Another example of a good piece of work is done by PwC and Trayas. Trayas is a small organization. And they've been working with Government of Punjab for about 2 years to make it dramatically easier for somebody to start a small business or to run a small business. As you know, we have cracked the World Bank test. But on the ground, the realities are not that different. What they have shown is where there is political will and support, you can do a lot to simplify, decriminalize, and digitize these processes. Now, this work shouldn't remain in Punjab. It should be taken to all states. So a set of organizations, including C2FO, Dun & Bradstreet, or Midyar, have shone the spotlight on one of the most difficult challenges every small business and entrepreneur faces, which is getting paid on time. Okay? On average, you're supposed to get paid in 45 days, but on average, small businesses get paid after 90, 100, 120 days. And the only reason is the big guys can get away with it. Okay? And everybody thinks, what can we do? This is the way it is. Okay? So this team has put together fantastic data, shone the spotlight on the issues, who are the worst offenders, what are the solutions, and this can be taken to scale. We also found there are lots of government schemes that are there high on intent with budgets, but they are not having the impact they need to have because some design changes are needed. And maybe Manisha ji, you can talk about some of these kinds of things. We found in every district in the country there is huge amounts of physical infrastructure ranging from district industry centers to our cities, which can be revived and repurposed to serve as accelerators and incubators for these kinds of small businesses and entrepreneurs. So all the building blocks are there. What we need is a national mission to take this, to connect the dots and take it to scale. And that's what we're proposing. This is the sort of summary slide of how we will do it. I'm going to move forward quickly. But nutshell, we are saying, look, it's time for big ambition. Our Prime Minister is all about big, hairy, audacious goals. And we're suggesting this might be the time for one of those kinds of mission mode projects. And we believe we can, through the decade, achieve this ambitious target of 10 million entrepreneurs who go on to create 100 million jobs. Now, we are an impatient country, so nobody's willing to wait till 2030 and all that. They want to know, what can you do by 2025? So we said, look, if there is enough political will, if there is reasonable resources, these are the kinds of things that are achievable in just 2 years using those building blocks. 4 million new enterprises, lots of jobs, 30, 40 million young people who are infected with the virus of entrepreneurship, bad joke, and in at least 100 districts revitalizing infrastructure to become growth hubs. And most importantly, we need to see at least a quarter of the new entrepreneurs be women-owned businesses.
Thanks a lot, Ravi, for setting a terrific context in a very short span of time. There's a lot to digest in what you just presented, and I look forward to discussing this with the panel. With that, let me welcome all of our panelists. Thank you so much for being here with us and helping us to think through what a structure and how will we achieve the vision of, let's say, 100 million new jobs that needs to be created by 2030. And to our minds, I think that was the genesis of how we got started off with GAME itself, that you have 120 million youth entering the workforce, as was evident in the last few sessions. You ask almost everybody, what do you want? They say, I want a government job. Well, we all know, forget government jobs, there are not enough jobs to go around, with only about 10 or 11% of the workforce in salaried jobs. The big question that we tried to address was what happens to the remaining 100 million people, right? How do we create not just livelihoods, but how can we create careers? How can we meet their aspirations? And where does the answer lie? And to our minds, the answer squarely, to a large extent, rested in the fact that we need to create 10, 15 million entrepreneurs locally who are able to create 5 to 10 decent jobs. And what will it take for us to unleash the power? So that's the context. I want to just put 3 images in front of all of us as we discuss this. The first visualization I want you to think about is, think about this person in a village called Kyatanalli in Mandya. His name is Manjunath. He runs a carpentry shop. He has his 15-year-old nephew who helps him. He manages to earn 20,000-30,000 rupees a month by making tables, sofa sets, beds, etc. When I was meeting him a few months ago and I was asking him, what do you want to be? I was amazed that he said, he had known about IKEA. He had read, he had heard that IKEA had come to Bangalore, was set up in Hyderabad. He says, why can't I be the IKEA of my village? Right? So he was trying to tell me that I only take orders when people ask me, and I know that the designs are more or less similar, and I have downtime. If I can manage to create modular furniture, I can assemble it fast and sell it. That kind of an entrepreneurial energy. So imagine Manjunath and hold him in your minds. There's another lady that I met recently in Mandya district itself. Her name is Bhanumati. housewife, when we offered her a job to help her village consumers learn how to use UPI and digital payments, her eyes lit up. And when we talked about this is how you will get paid, she said, forget all that. It is not about money, it's about my dignity. All these years I was sitting at home thinking, I'm useless, I don't have anything to do, there was nothing that somebody's taught me capable of. You give me something, I'll do it. And she's our highest performer now. In the last 4 months, she's enrolled 4,000 people to use UPI on WhatsApp, right? And the pride that she carries that I'm somebody in my village, right, is priceless. The third is, again, imagine a youth called Suresh, who's just finished his ITI, sitting at home, applying day in and day out for that government job. Has applied 5-6 times, does not know what the future holds, has no money, but wants to prove himself, but has no way to go forward. The National Entrepreneurship Mission at the end of the day must address these 3 stories. I'm sure there are many more. As Gandhiji said, the Antyodaya and the Sarvodaya, right? How do we think of the last person in the line, and how do we think of everybody in between? And how do we usher in answers for the questions that a Manjunath, a Bhanumati, and a Suresh have? And how can we get them to access various assets that are on the entrepreneurial journey, right? So I just wanted to set that as a context, and at the end of the day, let's kind of figure out how close are we to making the aspirations of these examples I talked about come alive. With that, we have a phenomenal panel today. We have Manisha ji, who is the Principal Secretary for Skills, Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Government of Maharashtra. Very passionate about the whole skills, entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem all working together. So she will bring in a very rich state perspective. We're fortunate to have Sri Raman, the CMD of SIDBI. SIDBI, of course, is the behemoth in the financial services and the financial institutional space. And SIDBI has been a massive supporter of this journey, and we've been very fortunate to have the support of SIDBI in our journeys at GAME as well, including helping us at this session. So thank you very much for being here with us. And Sri Raman will bring the perspective of the access to finance. How do we make sure that every youth who aspires to be an entrepreneur, what do we need at a National Entrepreneurship Mission to unlock the money that needs to go into their hands to build a business? Dr. Rajiv is a renowned medical practitioner, but also serves on the CII panel and has been with CII for a long time, representing the industry voice with respect to skills and entrepreneurship. And our dear friend Sharad, delighted to have you here. Sharad calls himself as a volunteer of iSpirit. He is, but he's also I keep calling him the tech backbone of our nation, where he's been instrumental in conceptualizing so many tech stacks. Sharad, to see your perspective from a tech angle, how do we make sure that this reaches the billion population scale that we need to address, right? So that's the conversation we'll have over the next 45 minutes. And we'll do it as a conversation amongst friends, as a brainstorming session, so that we can get as many good ideas out there as possible, right? So with that, ma'am, can I start off with you to share your perspective, especially, skills, entrepreneurship, and innovation. That is a rare combination to find as departments put together. Would love to hear your experience in the state, and then we'll come back to the question on what will it take for all of us to build it better.
Thank you, Madan, for having me on this platform with such distinguished co-panelists. I would just like to give you an overview of what kind of interventions are happening in the state, primarily driven by my department, and of course being supported by the state ecosystem of policies, right policy frameworks. And probably that will throw certain, a good light on what are the kind of things that maybe we can scale up, which are the areas where we can improve and sharpen our focuses. So friends, Basically, my department is looking at vocational education and training, but primarily through the instrument of ITIs. You know, there are industry training institutes across the country, which are managed by DGT in terms of setting standards and course curriculums, but we also innovate at the state level. I have around close to 1,000 ITIs, where 2 lakh students per year, young students who pass out in different trades. Our effort there is to basically oversee that they are getting industry relevant skills. And for that we are doing number of things. We are revising our curriculum in close connect with and dialogue with the industry partners. We have industry management committees where the industry person chairs the committee, IMC committee for management of IMCs. We also send our students. Our students now, we've signed a MOU with Siemens and Tata, and they are helping us to actually introduce dual system of training across the state. Already it's happening in 130 ITIs, where we actually, the students go for an intensive, it's a German model, where the students actually learn in the industry with a regular apprenticeship. And after the students pass out, we actually have a year-long national apprenticeship scheme where they are again certified by the industry. So we hope by this intervention, we actually, at least the youth that pass out from the ITIs, have industry relevant skills. Either they will find meaningful placement in the concerned sectors, or they are going to be entrepreneurs. So either ways they will be, be able to generate incomes for the households. Secondly, we are also looking at running the skill development programs from, the state budget as well as the central government schemes. And there also our effort is to actually, now we have taken policy decisions to just not go along with the private training providers, but have a green channel clearance for the industries. So if I have to train someone in construction, I have a tie-up with L&T that they will, come and give programs. So I'm first saturating the training institutions that are run by eminent industries in their domain, or the institutions which are run by the sector skill councils, so that I'm assured of a level of quality of training that is being given. Then besides this, what we are doing is also, we have a State Innovation Society, where we are trying to create an ecosystem of startups and incubators. So we are connecting with the network of private incubators, but apart from that, we are encouraging the SMEs, the industry associations, the industry clusters in every, region to run their incubators. And our State Innovation Society, through my department, gives a grant of 5 crores over a period of 5 years for these incubators to give technical support, mentoring, legal support, product certification, product testing, and mentoring to the startups who are incubated. We are also understanding that we have it is very important that the academic institutions become lab of entrepreneurship and innovations. We are encouraging all the VCs, and we have sanctioned 12 incubators across all our state universities. They are at various levels of development, but this is a good kind of a very positive step forward. So these are some of we also have a state board of vocational education and training, where all the vocational courses and education that is happening from the private providers, we give them an opportunity to do the accreditation from the state board and give the certification, so that, there is a certain, for the end consumer, there is a recognition of a regulatory body, and it is pretty flexible. The curriculums are accredited, and the certification happens through third parties and experts. It is not, the government functionaries who are doing this whole thing, but we are a facilitator in this whole process. So I think these are the levels, and now we have done a lot of policy changes also. One was this green channel clearance, where you don't have to come, the industry and development partners who are eminent do not have to come to us through a tender process. We make them direct training partners. So this is one major step we have taken. There was a mention of Uddam Foundation and others. We have been working very closely with Uddam. We have been very closely working with the Nandi Foundation of Mahindra and Mahindra. All of them in the morning, Mr. Sisodia also mentioned about the entrepreneurship mindset, that is EMC to be developed. We are already doing these trainings in our ITIs regularly with both these organizations. We have also now entered into a partnership with Tata Strive to come up with the Ignition Grant, where we will be identifying youth who have business ideas. They will be doing a regular, a short, intensive MBA, capsule MBA kind of a thing, how to make their plans, how to work out the project report, the sustainability aspect, the mentoring aspect, and we will do a hand-holding to them and provide them with a fund support up to 2 lakhs of rupees. Similarly, thing we are doing for young innovators in colleges. We are targeting polytechnics, government colleges and ITI students. To take this startup culture, I mean, it is skewed right now. It is more concentrated in Mumbai and Pune and this belt, Thane, for obviously the ecosystem that place has. We are trying to penetrate in tier 2, tier 3 cities. 15th August, we'll be launching a startup yatra across the state, in which we have galvanized the district administrations, and there will be a van with mobilization and facilitators going to every block in the state and ending up with a boot camp where the youth can pitch their ideas. We will be selecting the best innovators and those who have the best ideas to give them a cash prize and give them mentoring support, the ones who get selected eventually at the state level. So I think this is a kind of an overview that we have been doing.
Thank you so much. I love the idea of the startup yatra. I think spurring the spirit of entrepreneurship in every district is what we require. So, Ramanji, let me just come to you next, Sri Ramanji. From your perspective, I would also want you to share your thoughts on, SIDBI is just not a financial institution alone, but with several programs that you've done in the past, like Swavalambham and initiatives like that, there are several initiatives to kind of ensure that the entrepreneurial spirit out there is alive and kicking. And I think that's a larger responsibility that you have as an institution itself. So if you can also cover that part and in your interactions at the national level with various ministries and leaders, it'll be great if you can also share a perspective of what's happening that is exciting at the national level and what more should be happening.
So thanks so much for having me here. I think Dr. Ravi Venkatesan set a context which at least gave me the feeling that whatever we have done till now is just a drop in the ocean. So I think that's really well set out. Frankly, it's been a little over a year for me at SIDBI, and I'm also quite surprised as to how many things SIDBI does. And it is, again, lots of things. Probably we're spreading ourselves too thin, but the fact is that we are in the right places, and that is, I think, really the sort of heartening and encouraging note that I have found. SIDBI is doing direct lending. SIDBI is doing a tremendous amount of refinance. So in matters of numbers, I think we would probably be giving credit to something like 10% of the MSMEs in the country. So when I include refinance and direct finance together, we have for a long time ignored the micro enterprise. And actually, if you ask me, under the banner of Swavalambhan, which to a large extent equates with entrepreneurship. So, it basically means self-reliant. And we are today, we have in fact rolled out under the name Prayas, which is not to be confused with the other Prayas that was talked about, but it is a credit scheme for micro enterprises where we give loans up to, say, 3 or 4 lakhs. and it is targeted to those people who probably do not have access to bank finance. So it works through the microfinance system. So we, everywhere, I think all the work that SIDBI is done, except for its own direct finance to MSMEs, which again, ticket sizes of, 1 crore plus, we are working through partners. And I think that is really the other large message that I would like to, give here today to all of you is, if any and all of you have a good partnership idea, we are more than happy to work with you and take that forward. Because without the partner on the ground to handhold a micro enterprise is practically impossible. So the kind of help that is needed for them to, one, bring an idea to fruit, and second, to scale up, is very, very difficult. There are lots of people doing lots of excellent work. So one is, as you said, the credit part, where we need to scale up. We need to, and this is there in the Standing Committee of Finance report, we need to be there as a sort of lender to every NBFC in the country. So the banks do not really need our finance. But if we're really looking at expanding credit in the country, which numbers are, of 25 lakh crores being the amount of credit that's needed in the next 3 years to satisfy the MSMEs, we obviously need to do much more in terms of scaling up. And the only way to do it is to encourage and provide credit to so many more NBFCs. And when I say NBFCs, I actually include the NBFC MFIs also in that, because they're also scaling up in a sense. RBI has recognized that by allowing the MFIs also to give many more direct individual loans as opposed to just the SHG model or the JLG model. So, in our own plan for the next 3 years, taking it forward to maybe even the next 15 years, what we're looking at is our own ability to grow the micro enterprise loan, and that is entirely digitized. So I think thanks to, the likes of Sharad, we are all today using the JAM and using the GST to the hilt. But as I say that, the micro loans are not to persons who are within the GST. So we need to look at how better to assess the risk of such clients. And that's where more innovation is required. We've sort of lots of, I think 20 years ago, we set up something at IIT Kanpur, which has grown over the years. We got an excellent company from that incubation center, which is trying to look at a lot of psychometric data to better assess a person's creditworthiness. Now, that is really the kind of additional data points that we will need to be able to provide more money and therefore, suffer less, NPAs at the end of it. Because I think any lender who has to finally commercially, stand on their own feet. It's not possible for any government to keep providing the kind of support that is needed. But I think there's a lot that has happened. So the sheer, ability of all of us as lenders to be able to use the payment system for one, and two, to be able to use the GST and wherever that's needed and useful, and to be able to get digitized account statements. So the account aggregator is again an amazing sort of, revolutionary leap in that sense. So once that starts to sort of flow, today all the public sector banks have also linked into the account aggregator framework. So I think we have a greater amount of infrastructure to be able to have many more lenders to be able to deliver. And that, I think, we will see that happening immediately. On the non-credit side, and that's really, again, taking from what was just said, it's about providing skills to a very, very large number of people. And that's going to happen only when an equally large number of institutions, NGOs, sort of work towards this common purpose. The aim of SIDBI is really to create a micro-enterprise. And we have got a Swavalamban Connect Kendra running today in 100 districts. We're scaling that up in UP to cover all the 75 districts. And it's really about having somebody at a district level, which again, I realize is a drop in the ocean, but the fact that there is a set of people who know what are the government schemes available, which are the banks which are sitting around in the near vicinity, what is the kind of formats that they want, what is the kind of information that is needed for maybe a person who has the ability to scale up through bank finance, and we will therefore be able to handhold many more people. The results of the initial pilot, which also got hit by COVID in 100 districts, was reasonably encouraging for us to be able to now scale it up. So we, in the next couple of years, would look at going across all the 700 plus districts. But in terms of results, we found that we were able to help 2,600 people in those 100 districts to actually get a bank loan, which, if you really look at it, is great for the fact that they actually managed to convince a bank to give them a loan. So I think there is a lot that is needed going forward, and the bank loan is really from the point of view that the banks are still willing to give loans at, say, 14 to 16% as compared to the microfinance companies, which are at 25 to 30%, which is still much better than the informal money lender. So there's a lot of ground to be covered, but having looked at the way we do support for skilling and micro entrepreneurship, I'm really wondering how the incubation center based initiative will go forward. We ourselves have tried to look at putting money into another 20 incubation centers, having done IIT Kanpur and IIM Lucknow. But again, I wouldn't say that you should be confining yourself only to these kind of institutions. You need to really look at a lot of private incubation centers which are closer to the ground, which are probably much better connected with the people who can get the benefit of those incubation centers. So that is really one very important way to go forward. We've got the experience of the fund of funds, which helped us understand how AIFs can then further give money to startups. But then, as you rightly said, those startups are largely, the sort of engineering graduates who've got a good idea and obviously will manage to get some funding. The last thing I'd like to share with you is really, we did a challenge fund. It was called Swavlamban Challenge Fund, and we are running the second round of that. But the first round was about inviting people with good ideas or with those which have a small business to help them scale up. Some absolutely amazing enterprises came up, and one of them was what we are really trying to push is the looms of Ladakh, where a set of women, with the help of a few innovative graduates from NID, they've recaptured Pashmina as the GI tag for Ladakh, which I did not know. I always thought Pashmina came from Kashmir, but now it's actually a product of Ladakh. And they've got an excellent product, but again, it's about taking them to the market to be able to scale that up. So, this is one of the, winners of that contest. And it's really about doing this many more times over. So we're trying to do it in the Northeast with the Nagaland government. We are working very closely with today about 15 governments, and I really would want to say that what you showed, Ravi, was the Punjab experiment. If we can join hands with you and take that across 15 governments where we are working on cluster development funds. So using that, we should be able to, make a headway. So I think I've used up probably more than my allotted time. Thanks.
So I think we could have gone on and on with all the various initiatives at SIDBI. That gives me an idea that maybe we should do a convening just to understand and figure out how to partner with SIDBI, given the various initiatives and the network strength that you have across the country, through directly and through the banks that you partner with. Some very fascinating points that you touched upon. I think one of the things that we have detailed out in the report that's being cooked is that there are 5 elements that are required, and I'll just place that, and maybe that can be a conversation starter for the next one, that there is an ignite element where you need to ignite the minds of entrepreneurs and get them to be not just necessity-driven entrepreneurs, but opportunity-driven entrepreneurs, right? So how do you ignite that spirit of entrepreneurship? The second is, how do you nurture it, which is where incubation, processes, ma'am, you spoke about incubators, and how do you get somebody whose mind is ignited to be an entrepreneur to get onto the journey of being an entrepreneur without falling by the wayside, right? How do you nurture that? Third is debottleneck, right? As the entrepreneur gets onto the journey, how do you ensure that she is not frustrated by hundreds of forms that need to be filled and thousands of processes that needs to be followed? How do you simplify it? And that's where I think tech will play a massive role. The fourth element there is integrate. And ma'am, I'll come back to you with that. You know, I co-chaired a task force for the government of Karnataka recently with about 8-9 departments, and we were sitting together. And a large part of the conversation that we had was all about how there are several schemes by each of the department, but the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, right? So in the same district, there are 3 schemes running, which are more or less similar, but they've not got integrated, right? How do you integrate initiatives, not just at the government level, but at a community level? And lastly, using all those, how do we accelerate the entrepreneurial ecosystems, right? At the district level, the idea that you said, you spoke about the Connect Kendras, I think is a fascinating one, because finally it all has to land at the district, at the tehsil, and at the village level. So that's the framework that we've been thinking about. We also tried a growth rater kind of a model. We'll come back to that. I just wanted to park this so that when the next round that we quickly get, how do we then bring it all together? With that, Dr. Rajiv, let me come to you, and I'll come to Sharath at the end. From a vantage point where you operate on the CI National Panel for Skills and Livelihoods, what is your view of what's happening and what more needs to happen?
First, thanks, Ravi, for interesting presentation. I just want to share one more secret. Today I came to know that Ravi has also attended same college as mine for one day. But and today is the AFMC day, and I met a person, imagine, who attended AFMC for one day, and he decided to move on to engineering. Couldn't have been better scenario. And I'll just step back, and before I comment on your other CII activity and other things, I just want to, anybody can be entrepreneur. That's the most important and interesting aspect. There is no entrance exam required. There is no additional qualification required. I take my example. I used to be a surgeon in Indian Army, operating on battle casualties in Siachen sometime, and spent 5 years in jungles of Northeast. And then later on in the COVID time, decided to launch the healthcare platform, investment and operating platform, and now we have 1,300 beds. We have about 3 hospitals, and we are on a mission, as Ravi emphasized on our work, being a Fauji. I'm again glued to that word of mission, and I'll take few minutes on saying why this mission is important. And we are on mission to build a 5,000 plus bed platform in next 3 years' time. So anyone, if I, being a Fauji, coming from a surgeon background, can do it, I think anybody in this country can do it. That's important. The other aspect which I want to say, the word, why we need a mission to make it a successful. Whenever, if we go back to the places where we work, we go back to the organizations, we go back to any point in time where we wanted something to succeed. We have always taken this as a challenge and a mission, because it requires the coming together of more than one person and then make it a success event. Whenever in our organizations we decided to achieve something, it was mission mode, button pressed, everything coming together and saying, guys, this is the target we need to achieve. You scale it up, you look into the details. That's the only way to achieve what we are today deciding and defining that. That's important part of it. The most integral and the most important, impactful part which we today are discussing is creating an impact in the society. And I have said this multiple times, and I'll re-articulate. If you skill a person, give the job to that individual, you are changing 3 generations. That person's life is changed. He will look after his parents, and he will ensure that his kids are also better served in the society. That is the most important component we are talking about on that mission, is changing 3 generations of our society. That's the importance of this point. The word game is a fascinating word which has come up on the screen. If you are in a game, you actually require to win this in the spirit of completely coming together. That is the reason this is important. Unless we all stitch ourselves together, we will never be able to accomplish the success of this mission. And now I go back to why CII is important in this. CII, you have set of people who are successful businessmen, people who are actually running industries, people who are heading the organizations. They can be the mentors for everyone who wants to basically succeed. They can be the guiding principles. They can actually give you the platform. As Manisha ji said that they are actually working with a lot of ITIs. How can we join hands together and literally give that platform to the people who can actually get direct guidance from the people that this is the job, if you get trained, this is where I'm going to pick up. Before we came to the dais, we all started having a chat. First time we are meeting majority of us. What was the first integral component where people said, I'm doing this, can I join hands with you? This is networking. This is where we all need to come together to make it. So CII, over a period of time, if I just highlight few points, they run skill council. It's a very organized set of structured organization where we are trying to do the skill development. So there is a council which is focused on the health sector. There is a council which is focused on tech. There is a council which is actually working on manufacturing and engineering. And there is a council which is working specially for logistics and other aspects. Now, if you actually, and all these are, you have the people who are already working in that. They have the specialization. They understand the nature of the game, what exactly is required. And then you start working with those peoples. So whatever is happening in isolation, CII is a platform where we can actually work together, integrate, bind this, and then create that impact. I think nothing could be better if we stay connected beyond today's meeting. I think the point is today we should consider this as the starting point of integration between all the people who are like-minded and continue that relationship beyond today. I am sure next year when we have this meeting, we should be able to create and say, this is the difference or the impact I've created in this entire thing. Yeah.
Wonderfully said. I don't think we had bargained to get a Fauji also on the panel. And I think the point you made about the mission mode, about playing the game together, right? And about having very clear vision on what we need to achieve. And how do we need to come together? I don't think the doctor in you would have made it much more eloquent than the Fauji in you. So thank you for bringing that out so effectively. Sharad, over to you. Now, you heard all of this. How do we make it happen, right? And I'm sure this is the question that you grapple with on a daily, hourly basis. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so first I want to go back to the problem, because I think we should frame the problem. And Ravi has done a very good job. I want to build on that. How many of you have ever gone to a DVD, CD? Remember those old days where you rented the movies and there was always a little shop nearby and you went and buy, right? So you don't be shy, raise your hand fully. How many of you, right? It doesn't exist anymore. Netflix has replaced it. How many of you have ever gone to an STD booth to make an STD call? Doesn't exist anymore. You know, phones have replaced it. So the reality is that economy is always losing a certain type of jobs. And we must first recognize that there is a major such shift that is happening. How many of you have bought your current mobile phone online, not from a physical shop? You know, if you bought, I would also raise my hand. So now if I buy this phone online, if I pay 100 rupees for it, only 2 rupees, less than 2 rupees is there with Amazon or Flipkart. 98 rupees by end of the day is shipped to wherever this phone was manufactured. So if it's a Samsung phone, 98 rupees has gone away. If you had bought this phone 10 years ago from a local shop, you know, I come from Bangalore, that would probably be Sangeeta, then 18% of that 100 rupees stayed in India. Only 82% went away. That 18% provided jobs. it was rent for the shop, it was people working in the shop. How much were they paid? They paid 12,000, 15,000 rupees a month, or 18,000 rupees a month, roughly $3,000 a year, right? Those jobs have gone away. Why have they gone away? Because this 18% has become 2%. India has the largest gap amongst most countries, or at least amongst, the top 20 countries. It has the largest gap between factory to street price, because we had a very inefficient distribution chain. So our cement manufacturers are very efficient at the factory level, but usually there is a 24 to 30% markup by the time cement reaches the house where it is going to be used. This is, by the way, true for steel. This is true for HLL goods. This is true for almost anything and everything that you see. And for a variety of reasons, e-commerce, improved roads, this is shrinking. So now if you take, for example, a McKinsey goal of saying $1 trillion digital economy, what does that mean? It means for $1 trillion digital economy, 15% of the factory to street price difference will evaporate. Take solar cells. 10 years ago, sales, distribution, marketing and installation was 27.4%. So when you had a solar cell installation, 27 rupees stayed here. The remaining, you could say, the remaining 73 rupees went outside, because we don't manufacture solar cells at scale. Today, that is 6.1%. So when you become the largest user of solar cells, 6 rupees stays here. 94 rupees goes to China. Who is happy? China is happy. So if you do this $1 trillion economy, you are essentially with 15%, $3,000 per person job, 50 million jobs are going to be lost in the next 4-5 years. This is over and above what is happening today. Now, the moment this happens, society tears apart. If you go 150 years ago, this is what happened in Europe. In 50 years, farming eviscerated jobs. People were left with nothing to do. They were then hired by these factories, which would pay them not even subsistence wage. They would hire children, and the children would work there. And do you know, this is how we got communism. Communism was a response. Marxism was a response to this social problem that we had. The question I ask you is, why did US not get communism? Because in 1862, Lincoln, who had won the Civil War in the US, if you read his biographies, he says, I want to be remembered not for the fact that I dealt with slavery and brought the country together, but I want to be remembered for my 1862 Land Grants Act. This is what he said. We don't appreciate this. MIT is a land grant university. All public universities in the US are land grant universities. The societal response in the US was, we will give you federal land. आप लगाओ उसमें vocational college. आप उसमें एक generation में train करो कि the farmers' children are not going to be farmers. And US managed to go from 80% of the jobs being farming jobs to less than 30% of the jobs being farming jobs in 50 years. Without any social upheaval. This is why the US never gave an opportunity for communism to take root. So first, I want to acknowledge the work this team is doing. They are giving us a societal response for something that is exceedingly important. Because until you take this societal response, which is our equivalent of the 1862 Land Grant Act, this society will tear apart and will therefore see radicalism that will come in. And we will not be living in the India that we are living in today. So this is an existential problem, first of all, right? So I just wanted to put this in perspective and say this is important. Now, I could talk forever, but I am sure Madan will give me a chance again. So I'm going to pass on this and come back and say what to do about it in my next go around, rather than consuming all the ideas in this go around itself. Yeah.
So, Sharad, thank you so much for so emphatically setting that point. And in the example, we discussed this, the numbers that you used is very telling. I don't think any of us will forget that in a hurry. So thank you so much for, let's do a quick, we have another 15 minutes. Let's come back to you itself for the go around, Sharad. And take a minute. Maybe we can, so we do a quick 1 minute before I open it up to the audience. If we are to build the National Entrepreneurship Mission together, maybe from your perspective, what is the number one thing that we must do?
No, I've had the opportunity to look at what you're doing, so I think it's a fine, very good plan. And I'll just emphasize two things. One, I'm hoping Raman will emphasize further. You know, I think we have to be able to do information collateral-based lending, you know, to the small businesses, because they don't have physical collateral to offer. And Raman, I'm hoping you'll talk more about this. The second thing I want to say is that, look, yes, that PCO has gone away. But I want you to Google right now and see PDO. Do you know there's a revolution taking place today in the country around PDOs? Look up PM Vani and see how many news items that you see, which is creating PDOs. Because what is happening is, we managed to deliver fiber to every tehsil, or almost to every tehsil. But our telecom players are so capital starved that they don't have the wherewithal to actually install the networks. So what is it an opportunity? To create public data offices. Luckily, the government of India took that scheme. It's called Vani. iSpirit had a role to play in putting the protocol in place, but it's taking off like gangbusters. And it creates employment. It is not employment forever. You know, it'll last only 5-7 years, and it'll go away. So we'll have to think about what to do next. But that is kind of important as we think of it. Similarly, agriculture, drones is going to be reality. Drone operators are going to be there in large numbers. How can we find a way to create a kind of a drone operator jobs at a scale that we cannot imagine? Again, it requires Government of India, MoCA has, Ministry of Civil Aviation and others are driving a policy called Digital Sky. And again, it is based on a public technology and based kind of a program to make that happen. But this is another way to also think about this problem. So I'll leave it with two things. PCO, drone operators, these kind of jobs, they're not permanent jobs, they're 10-year, 15-year jobs, but we need to create many of them in the short term. And then we have to equip every entrepreneur, you know, with information collateral-based lending. So if you're okay with this, Madan, I'll hand it over to Raman to say a little more about the information.
Thank you,
collateral
Sharad. Yes, sir.
There's no doubt. I think the country's seen too much of security-based lending. In fact, it's reached a point where banks do not give a loan if there's no security. So just for, you know, sort of information, we have put together something called GST Sahay. Again, it's talking about GST. So it is obviously, you know, 1.5 crore entities that are GST entities today, which can get the benefit of this. So the GST basically serves as an excellent proxy for the health of any business. And that's really where bankers draw strength, also pull data from the bank accounts. And putting just these two together is sufficient for a call to be taken that we can give lending on that particular invoice or set of invoices, and thereby providing working capital for millions of businesses which could get that working capital, which they do not get today, because banks, again, provide working capital, again, based on security. So unsecured lending is something which is, I think, we're at the anvil of this becoming a big product. We have been testing it on the RBI sandbox with the help of iSpirit and a few other people. So hopefully we should be able to spread that and get all NBFCs and banks to be able to use that style of lending. There will certainly be risks. You are not going to get a repayment on every invoice, but part of this is a dedupe registry, which will also get hosted at SIDBI, so that no invoice gets funded twice. So that's again a, you know, sort of important check in this entire system. So we should look forward to that sort of scaling up. The other important digital initiative actually is the TREADS. Now that again is a Government of India initiative. It has reached a point where several corporates are coming to the TREADS, and in that manner financiers are giving finance to that large corporate and allowing the supplier to the large corporate to take the money and get paid. So it does solve to some extent a delayed payments problem. It has not been able to scale up enough because I again think that large corporates do not wish to come in there and make a quicker payment. It's as simple as that. What are the ways we can incentivize this to happen? It's something that we are working upon. There is actually a guarantee scheme for financiers when they come to the TREADS platform, which again, because it's not really used that often, but we're looking at suppliers being able to come there directly. These suppliers will come with a score. So we are working on a concept of a more comprehensive score, which goes just beyond repayment. So today there are scores in the market, CIBIL being the more known entity which provides that score. So these scores are based on repayment data. When you add repayment data with GST data, ITR data, and bank data, then you're coming up with a more comprehensive score. So that's again something which we hope will help MSMEs walk into financier's office or onto a digital platform and say, this is my score, and therefore there is a certain assurance that financiers would get by seeing that score. So that's again something which is in the works. We hope to bring that out shortly. But just a larger point on jobs. I think Sharad put it really well that jobs will come and go. It's like a creative destruction concept. But it's really about, can we do something right now as we speak, maybe for the next 10-15 years, where MSMEs, and really I'm talking about proprietorships, get involved in the solar industry, because it's a capital intensive industry for installing it, but I'm sure there's a lot of work that can happen in India when you need to maintain and support so many installations. Exactly. It's something that I've also thought about, but probably have not got the answer. So if there is something that we can do in that space, because it will allow for millions of people to get an alternate employment. So I restrict myself to that.
Super. Thank you so much.
The solar thing is actually much bigger. I love that point. The world has got to go through an energy transition from fossil fuels to renewables. And today it's being positioned as it's an imperative because of carbon and climate change and so forth. It also turns out to be the biggest development opportunity, job creation opportunity. And therefore, we need to flip it, saying it's development and jobs first and climate is the byproduct. And we're seeing enormous opportunity. And in fact, this transition to renewables and Prime Minister's net zero by 2070 goal is not going to be happening because of government. It's got to be led by millions of entrepreneurs, small and large, supported by government policies which are favorable and big capital. So I really wanted to underscore your point that this is not a headwind, it's actually a tailwind.
Thank you, Ravi. I think that presents, as you said, a massive opportunity that we need to consider. Dr. Rajiv, a quick minute.
Taking on, I think, the majority of the point which people, there are few things which I would love to highlight. Skilling the people and then giving the job. It's like creating a corridor of skill and job, where the industry and the people have to come together. There's a lot of good work which is happening all across. So if, with the help of CII, with help of the people who are working in isolation, we can create that corridor. Somewhere CII can help in actually training people, upskilling people. That's the most important aspect of. And the two-way corridor gets accomplished when those people are given a job. So that's the most important component of creating that skill and the job corridor. That's the important aspect of it. I think that's a very integral part of it, if we can do that. Coming from the healthcare sector, trust me, on one side we are saying we are looking for jobs. There aren't any. We are literally asking people, please help us find people. Okay, this is the biggest challenge today we have in our hospitals. That's the work. If somebody is doing something to train people, nurses, technicians, please take my number, shout out, perfectly fine. So that is the gap which is there. It means there are some people who are saying we do not have jobs. There is an industry which is crying, I need skilled manpower. Why can't we use these kind of forums and simply say, guys, we are happy to work together and this is what we'll do. I'll spend few seconds more with permission of Madan. Now, every organization can also promote what people have spoken about in trying to create more jobs. Like in Meringo Asia, what we said, in every hospital, wherever we'll have a hospital, what we will do is that we'll screen the entire population of who cannot afford to be screened for cancer and congenital heart disease. Now, this requires a lot of generation of jobs also, because we'll be working with some volunteers, we'll skill people, and that is how we said. And most important is, through our foundation, we will also ensure that people are treated. Healthcare is a giant wheel of economy.
Beautiful.
It's a giant wheel of economy. It actually triggers multiple job points. If you step back and think about it, whether it is the devices, it is pharmas, it is doctors, nurses, technicians, flavor, you name it, it's a giant wheel of economy. So I'm saying people who are working in isolation, trying to do something, please utilize either the CII or the organizations to accomplish this mission. Then only we'll write the chapter of success for all of us.
Terrific. Thank you. Ma'am, over to you.
So quickly, we trained around 40,000 people under PMKY and Mukhyamantri Maharogya Kaushalya Yojana last year in para health workers in across 35 skills that were aligned with the NSQF and Health Sector Council. And I'm really struggling for their placement, so I'll be reaching out with the names.
There we see a collaboration happening right away.
They were trained in government medical college and private medical colleges and government hospitals, so I can vouch for their training, and they were hands-on, practically giving lot of, during the COVID days, very critical support system to the health establishments, and I would really want to leverage on your networks for that. I think quickly now, there is no question, so these are just some thoughts. I do want to emphasize that this document that you have prepared, it's a great and very comprehensive thing, very much needed, the whole attention, because we don't have in governments and governance systems long-term vision. But this is creation of 100 million jobs. I think we have to have a realistic time horizon and a very, very systematic institutional building and convergences happening. The national committees which are envisaged, the NEM and the SCM, state level convergence that is to happen, and then the district level. I think the district level is the key to become the growth hub. But unless it is driven as a agenda from the top political executive, the required energy that is required and the political will, I think that needs to be given to this entire agenda. In terms of convergence, if you were to ask me, I think coming together of skill departments, school education, university, higher and technical education, urban development, rural development, forest department, these are women and child development departments. All these departments will need to be factored in. Apart from your document talks about coming together of stakeholders, but primarily looking at ITIs, incubators, accelerators, financial institutions. But I would say that please don't lose sight of the large scale. If you have to generate large scale sustainable livelihoods, you have to have a focus on agro-based, value additions and processing, allied animal husbandry, so a combination of, fishes, fishing, poultry, sericulture, floriculture, horticulture, agriculture. I think you have to think of, many such models. You have to also look at institutional convergences with Krishi Vigyan Kendras, with agriculture universities, with specialized domain universities in rural area and organizations. I also feel that please don't lose sight of tribal belts, having worked as Principal Secretary Tribal in the past, because all our skill development, trainings are targeted to the urban and mainstream rural things. So conversion of minor forest produce and community forest rights resources that today have been given to these communities. I think technical support and hand-holding there is very much required. When you come to inclusive model for women and for, vulnerable groups, we were trying to do trainings with, prison inmates. And there also I found a differentiating factor that the male prisoners, they had much more flexible hours. They got a work order from the High Court to do, carpentry and woodwork for nearly 5 crores. And there's, because of police manuals and jail manuals for security of women inmates, we had to really make, flexi timings and negotiate. Similarly for transgender and, other categories. So I would say that, these are some of my things, and I would say that we can do it, we should do it, and there is no other option also. From Maharashtra side, we are committed. You can take our state and my department as a pilot
Wonderful.
to take it forward. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I still need all of us here, all of you, and there's an engagement. We will not have time for a Q&A. You might have got post-it notes distributed. This is a conversation, a brainstorming. I really want, there's a wealth of information, knowledge, experience that is there, and I want to tap into it. So can I request you to do the following? Take the post-it note, write your name. I want 3 questions. You can choose to answer all or one of them. Definitely the third one for sure. Okay. One, what is the question that is on top of your mind, right? If you can just write that down in some quick bullet points, one question. 2, if you were to be tasked to run the National Entrepreneurship Mission, what would your number 1 priority be? Okay. And third, what can you do, either as an individual or as an organization? As I say, when Sri Rama was building the bridge, the squirrels came and said, I'm willing to take a pebble, right? So, and I think the whole idea here is, as we need to build the bridge to the prosperity that we're all aspiring for, each of us have a role to play, however small or big that is. So if you can just write down what is it that you can contribute. There's a whiteboard that you will see outside. Just post it. I promise you, from the game team, we will come back to you with some thoughts on the questions and take you up on the contributions that you had, and we will definitely assimilate the ideas that you have given. So if you can just spend a few minutes on that, that will be fantastic to go along. I just want to summarize as you're thinking about this. It was fascinating. I don't know how we spent the last 1.5 hours, and this could have gone on and on. The key words that I just want you to do, as we were going through the discussion, I was just noting down a word cloud, so to speak. Clearly, convergence came. The fact that we need all to come together. Mission mode is absolutely clear, that we need a mission mode to achieve the 100 million jobs that we need. The whole digitization of the economy and how digitization, not just for making it much more efficient, will also create the wave of jobs coming along. And the fact that the fuel and the lubricant both are the money, and therefore, how do we really assess creditworthiness? How do we take bets on people? What kind of information? And how do we make it all come together was some of the key themes I took away. And needless to say, the biggest elephant in the room and the biggest opportunity that we have is all of this is only and only possible if we all come together. If all of us continue to play our own games, there's no hope in hell, right? So with that, I just want to make sure that, the openness that each of the panelists had to say, come, we will all work together. GAME is an alliance, as you observed. The A is an alliance, which is the most important word in our name. We are open to working with all of you. Actually, not even open, we want to work with all of you and to make sure that the dream of the 100 million new economy, jobs that we can create and the prosperity we can create for our nation and for the world, we make it a reality. When we do Charcha in 2032, we will be talking about the success of the last decade
Inshallah.
and what we need to reinvent for the next decade. Thank you.